Good day. This is Larry Green and Michael Saltman with San Juan Islands Community Network. And today we are speaking with Kori Mapstead, who is really the administrator for Paideia School. And so welcome to the program, Kori. And we'd love to have you introduce yourself and also maybe address the first question is, what are the key challenges that need to be addressed in order to continue quality educational programs and services for our youth while reducing the risk of the spread of COVID-19?
Thank you. I've been teaching at Paideia for 11 years. All my kids have gone through Paideia. And last year, I became principal of our little school. And we've been doing a lot of research on how to protect our students. And during this time of COVID, and some of the key challenges that we see need to be addressed during this time is just the wearing of masks will be very tiring for students. And we've been considering different ways of how to help our students be able to get through the day. Now, we haven't even experienced a whole day with students in the classroom yet. So one of the thoughts we have is coming up with very frequent times out of the classroom outside where they can take their masks off so they can get some fresh air and get a break. Some of the other challenges I see is as we have to keep socially distant in the school is that we're taking away a lot of the fun activities that they do. Even like playing games or breaking into groups and being in small clusters doesn't seem like really a smart way to do things this year. So we are considering how to incorporate some of the fun of learning while we still socially distance and keep those masks on to keep them safe. We have, lots of parents who don't want their kids to have to wear masks. So it'll be interesting to see what the numbers look like this year as we head into fall.
Thanks, Kori. The second question is, what did you learn from your experience providing distance learning last year that is influencing changes and improvements for this fall?
Some of the things that I think we learned at Paideia from doing the distant learning during the shutdown of COVID in the spring, we definitely had some students not as successful who need more hands-on or even just a teacher sitting next to them to prompt them getting some work done. That was very difficult for kids, I would say, who maybe had ADD or ADHD to stay focused on a screen. And also considering your mute button, learning how to interact on a screen without making a lot of noise, and would be irritated if I muted them. So we had a lot of learning to happen over Zoom. That was definitely a hard thing for my kids who had some special needs. I found that just talking to them, you would lose interest quickly. So I used a lot more PowerPoints with pictures. Even if I was asking a question, students a lot of times may be distracted and not hear the question and then be lost quickly. And so I learned to have the PowerPoints with the question and then the answer come up so that we were interacting more of hearing and seeing the instruction that was happening. Our school did a lot of packets. So the kids had a notebook Monday through Friday, and they knew what to pull out on Monday as we went through our school day on Zoom. We also felt like being on Zoom all day was too much screen time. So we had down times when they were to be doing work and then come back on Zoom. I found my best students struggled to get their work done in a timely manner at home. There's no incentive to turn their work in. So I came up with a challenge of every day at the end of a school day, they would pop on Zoom and show me their completed work, and they would kind of get a stamp for the day. I teach 5th and 6th graders. They love getting stamps and knowing they can earn a reward. So all of a sudden, my kids were getting all their work done. The parents were a lot happier without a lot of parent involvement. For, 5th and 6th graders can do it independently, but it required some more thought on how to challenge them to even want to get their work done at home. definitely had one student where depression hit when they realized they couldn't come back to school and have any social interaction. So working with the family on how to help the student come out of that depression and be able to finish the school year strong was another challenge that we had. As I look into the fall, at this point, we plan on being in person, knowing that we could quickly turn to complete teleschool at any time. The teachers in our school have already come up with a plan to go to Zoom and what that will look like for our day. I think maybe I could have a little bit more Zoom time than I did. I tried to make it very minimal, and I think I will extend it some chunk in the morning and some chunk in the afternoon with downtime in the middle. So we're considering what were the students' needs, how do we best get their education done in a great manner. But we really did rely a lot on parents every week picking up their work to be done and then turning it in at the same time. So for teachers, a little bit harder. You're grading their work through the whole week in one day versus every day checking on their work. So I also would implement some way of being able to check either their math or things that need to be checked more on a daily basis than once a week. We were grading once a week. So if a student got off, they were very off for the whole week. So those are some of the things I would want to put in this year. Because we're so small, the idea of meeting in person still is more appealing than teleschool. But if we get a COVID in the school or the health department says it's time to shut down, we're prepared to do that right away.
What equity plan do you have to specifically address the diverse needs of typically underserved or underperforming students, such as those in low-income families, Black and Brown students, and students with disabilities?
At our little school, a student may have even an IEP from the public school, but we typically, because we're so small, can work with all students at whatever level they're at, whether they're advanced and need extra work or behind and need extra help just getting caught up. So it's a little bit different for us as far as having kids that fit this category of being underperforming or low income or students of ethnicity. We have all of that in our school, but work really hard on every one of them having equal opportunity. I would say my students that really struggle, in the spring, I set up extra time when I worked one-on-one with them over Zoom. So they had kind of a tutoring session outside of the classroom setting on Zoom. We had students who could not afford any type of device in the spring. And so we were able to provide either a computer or a tablet that enabled them to do Zoom with us and stay current with all their work. So at this point, we still have that availability for the fall. We have computers to check out and Kindle Fires that we use for reading and such that also can do Zoom. So for our students who are lower income, and we do have students at our school who are on scholarships, so we do make sure that they have what they need to be able to do long distance or teleschooling. And I think we did a pretty good job of that in the spring. And if they didn't have current internet, we worked with them on getting better internet. So I think that answers that question of how to have a plan to make sure all students are covered and able to have a good education.
What plan do you have to support parents and families who elect to homeschool their children or form neighborhood pods and need coaching and instructional materials to effectively teach their children?
Our plan to support families in our school that have opted to homeschool or develop pods this year, more for whether they don't want to be exposed to COVID, or we specifically have families that don't want to have to do Zoom this year, or they do not want their children wearing masks. We have offered the ability for them to have access to the curriculum that we use. The ones that are opting out this year are saying they will be back the year after. So we would love for their students to stay current with our curriculum so they are ready to come right back in. So we have definitely given that access. We have some littles, as we call them, first graders that are choosing to homeschool. And we have offered any of our manipulatives or things you might need for the younger kids so that those parents don't have to go out and purchase all the items needed for their students to learn at home. And they will be buying our curriculum. Specifically, they've all asked to buy our curriculum so that they don't have to go out and do all the research. So if they need support on how to use that curriculum, the teachers are open and available to do that any way they need so that we know that they're effectively able to teach their kids at home.
School held in buildings requires significant space changes, PPE resources, sanitation, COVID testing access, and other considerations. How well prepared are you to hold school in facilities this fall? And are there viable options for meeting with smaller groups of students should the schools be closed?
With school being held this year, and we are working towards being in person to start the school year out, we know it requires significant space changes, PPE resources, sanitation, even COVID testing access. And we are still in the process of being prepared for that. Right now, our class sizes, we are capping at 7 or some anywhere from 5 to 8, depending on the size of the classroom we have, so that the desks are spread out. The students will be required to wear masks. The teachers we are getting face shields and masks, mostly for at the front of the classroom, maybe even using the face shield when teaching so the kids can see our mouth, just so they have better understanding of what's being said, and then using the mask when we're anywhere close to a student. We're going to require temperature checks every day with a health questionnaire. We have changed how the students will enter the building. So we have a large assembly area in our building. They will come in and have an assigned seat that's at least 6 feet apart from each other. And then our admin will go around and do temperature checks before they come into the classroom, along with doing a hand washing. We will do lots of hand washing. Anytime they leave the classroom, they will hand wash. When they enter back in the classroom, they will be hand washing. We probably will do a second temperature check somewhere midday, probably more for our younger students who tend to get sick quickly. Like they can come to school healthy, and then by maybe 10 or 11, we can see students begin to really, whether they're getting a temperature or stomach ache, whatever. So we may do a second health temp check midway through our day. We're going to stagger our start times. So each class will have a 10-minute window of coming to school and kind of bringing them through, so we don't have all students entering that large space at the same time. We will also stagger our lunchtime. So basically each class is kind of like their own pod. So if you have 5 to 7 students in a class, they're pretty much with each other all day and not interacting with another grade level. As far as lunch, recess, all of those things will be changed. Where normally they're all together, they will just be with their classroom. What else will we be doing? We're going to just have like markers outside, like lining up. They'll have a space that they know they stand on. We've talked about having a hook outside where they can put their masks on that are separate from each other. So they have a break from wearing their masks, but they won't be near anybody else. All the things that are involved. Basically, if a student has a cough, a runny nose, stomach ache, they're going to be asked to be at home. Where typically parents send their kids to school still with, like, you need to push through being sick. That is not an option this year. There's no pushing through being sick. So with the potential kids missing more school due to having a minor cold or symptoms that aren't COVID related, but we're not going to have them in the classroom, we're trying to figure out how to maybe have Zoom as an option during our normal class day. So if a student has to be home and they're not very sick, but they still want to be involved in the classroom, we're going to try to figure out how to set up where they can still be interactive with the classroom throughout the day. It's going to be a lot more for parents keeping their students home when they're not very sick. We a lot of times have kids come to school with coughs and sore throats, and the parents just medication, give them lots of medication to get through their day. That really won't be an option this year. So those are some of the things we're working on. If we are shut down, I think there's still potential of having maybe one class a day, maybe once or twice a week being in the classroom and nobody else at the building or something like that. We haven't really talked about that as an option, but I think it may be one we do. We still want to follow all the CDC and health department guidelines. So we're working and talking to the health department often to make sure we're still in following all the correct guidelines so our students and our teachers are safe. We also will not be allowing any volunteers into the school, no adults or outside people coming in that could potentially spread COVID into the classroom. So that will definitely change some of the things on how we work, because we usually have a lot of volunteers coming in, and that will be changing. We also thought about talking to one of the health facilities here about teachers maybe even being tested every couple of weeks in case we happen to be asymptomatic, and we wouldn't want to be spreading that to our students. So that may be something we also offer as an option for our teachers.
What is the plan that you have in responding to someone who ends up, a student or a staff member, who ends up being positive?
If we should have a student or a teacher who tests positive for COVID, whether they're asymptomatic or not, we will shut the school down and go to Zoom for 2 weeks and have an opportunity to clean the school and have anybody who's been exposed to see if anyone else comes down with COVID before we come back into the classroom. So whether that would require some testing or not, we are definitely prepared to go teleschool if we should have a positive test within our building so that everyone feels safe and an opportunity to keep the distance. If a student should test or should begin to have any type of COVID symptoms with a fever and cough, we would probably require the students to get a COVID test before returning to school. So we would be looking for a negative test if they have had any symptoms that line up with COVID.
How many children depend upon school lunch programs and daycare? And how do you plan to support them throughout the school year?
Our school specifically does not do, we don't have a hot lunch program. And so our students bring their lunch every day. In the past, we have had the opportunity to do a hot lunch once a week from the public school. And so we have taken orders and the kids are allowed to bring their money in to have a hot lunch once a week from the public school. So that won't be happening, at least at this point, starting the school year out. But all of our students actually bring their own lunch. If we have a student show up without a lunch, we always have food available to assist and make sure they have a snack and lunch. We have a few students who have extreme food allergies, so we always have access to food items that they can have also. So if things are brought in, we always have to be sure those kids with extreme food allergies are also being taken care of. If we have to shut down at any point, our plan in order to support students with any physical, mental, or emotional challenges would be to be in a constant conversation with the family and the parents and offering our services outside of a classroom Zoom, that we would be having one-on-one time with them, whether that's just strictly for encouragement or it's to do some of their schoolwork where they need extra assistance. The teachers would be willing to give extra time in the afternoon to be sure they're staying on track with the classroom.
What are the costs that need to be considered? Where will the funds come from? And what other community resources are you tapping to support education goals?
The costs that may be considered for Zoom or going teleschool would be ensuring that our students have devices and internet. The funds that we occasionally can come from, sometimes we have people who ask if they can offer any financial assistance to help us. We have a board that will actually go out and is looking for grants and have gotten grants for electronics and different things that we have needed to support our educational goals. sometimes we have needed mostly electronics is where we tend to be low on. And so we definitely have asked community or have gotten grants from our community to help facilitate having the correct equipment for our students to be at home.
So school leadership can be inherently lonely. What thoughts do you have about how our communities can work together to support quality education in a time of crisis?
My thoughts on how our community can work together to support each other. So this past week, we reached out to the public school and wanted to just hear what they were doing so that we could be a part of the conversation. And Fred Woods was very amenable to that, included my admin and myself into their Zoom meetings, which was just really nice to feel a part of the whole community and what decisions they would be making. They have a lot more to consider as being in school or out of school, but we appreciated the opportunity to just be a part of it because it is hard to be home doing teleschool. And I think anything we can do to facilitate teachers being in communication with each other, allowing the private schools to be in communication with the public school, also I think helps you feel like you're part of the whole San Juan community. I know that the other private schools are trying to be in session also. We as a school, as our little school, have had Zoom sessions every week so teachers can just say what's hard, what's working, even though we weren't able to meet in person. We just wanted to hear each other's voices and see each other's faces. So anything we can do to allow teachers to have a group of people to be talking to. It is very challenging to be home with your family at home doing school. So I think definitely offering even once a week a place where the teachers can say, hey, we're all coming on at this time and we would like to just talk about what has been difficult this week. Or maybe just challenges with one student and any other ideas students or parents might have or teachers have to help that one student is really helpful. So I know as our little school during COVID in the spring, we definitely once a week stayed on for at least an hour just to talk about things that were hard, how to overcome difficult things, how to encourage each other. So if we should go to teleschool, we would definitely go to that. I appreciate public school, including the private schools in their conversation.
These are very hard times, but this is a time of transition and potential transformation. And it all depends upon, how the community comes together. And so the general question that I've got for you is just one of reflection. Being here on the island right now and in the islands, what is your sense of community? What is your sense of hopefully great ways for this community to come through it in actually better shape?
I think San Juan community has done an excellent job figuring out how to protect each other. I really appreciate our community in the willingness to wear a face mask, where lots of communities have not across the United States. I think supporting each other in any way we can. I know a family that tested positive for COVID this summer, and we all worked to reach out to them and give, take food or anything that was needed. I think our community is just doing a good job of trying to protect each other. What can we do in the future as we go through this? I don't know. It's quite a challenging place to live with tourists coming and people being not happy with tourists being here. But so far, the tourists seem pretty respectful and is keeping our economics up. I don't know. We live in a very different setting than other communities with a lot of transient people coming through. I'm hopeful with the school year coming and tourism dropping off that the community will still be able to really support each other through this difficult time, unprecedented. None of us have been through anything like this. So as I remind my own children, we don't know what this looks like from day to day, week to week. This is something we're all working towards. I think our young people have the hardest time. Our late teens and 20-somethings really challenged who need the social interaction to still stay safe. And so I think as a community, we can still encourage outdoor activities and things for them to do so they stay connected. And even families I know have picked one other family to do outside things with. So as we can encourage each other to still be connected in some way. My parents have learned how to use Zoom, which is very difficult for older people, and they have formed some opportunities to meet with other people their age on Zoom. And I've been very impressed with their ability to still find a way to be connected in our community.
Thank you, Kori, for participating in this interview and sharing all the wonderful things that you're doing to prepare for this coming school year. And we wish you the very best.